Seems it's time for a start. Hello to everyone. We are very pleased to greet you all here to a very extraordinary event which starts this year with a very interesting discussion. Um, what are the trends in telematics in 2022? It's the great time for us to think about it and to hear about it from different parts of the market. So I'm presenting ourselves on behalf of organizer of the event, but uh, I'm pleased to introduce you to the moderator of today's discussion and Mr. John Grigorchevich from Phoenix Alusi, Indonesia, the integrator company with so much of experience of doing some great projects in telematics, will moderate the discussion today. John, here you go.
Great, thanks, Maxime. So firstly, welcome to Tim and Ksenia and to all of the participants who are here on this webinar. As Maxime said, the world today and the world that we operate in is under constant change. And this is something we have to deal with every day. And the challenge for us is we don't know what's going to be around the corner. So hopefully in this webinar, the speakers will give you some insights as to how they see the market developing within 2022. What are some of the challenges that they have been able to pick up with this, the trends that are happening now? And what are some of the guidelines that you as integrators and partners can use in this, these trying times to not only retain customers, but also add additional customers and services into the lines that you currently have. So without further ado, just a bit of housekeeping. At the top right-hand corner of your screen, you have your chat button, which a lot of you already have found, but also where you can ask questions for the webinar itself. The webinar will run for about 60 to 70 minutes on the discussion, and then we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ksenia to kick off the session.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And first of all, thank you for Galileosky team that actually gathered us today. Unfortunately, virtually, but again, that's also a great opportunity. And as John rightfully mentioned, the market is changing, and the IoT market in particular is changing constantly, and that's the reality we are living in. And I think that one of the key changes that a lot of integrators and manufacturers and solution providers in general discuss is the supply chain shortages, what to do with the semiconductor shortages, how it affects the industry, what the manufacturers should do, and so on and so forth. And I think that Maxime will be able to elaborate more on from the perspective of the manufacturer here. But we as a software provider, solution provider, we do see that not really as a challenge, but also as an opportunity. The semiconductor shortages, they mean that less vehicles are manufactured, less vehicles are out there for the end user to purchase to expand the fleet. Therefore, from the first sight, what the solution provider could think in telematics, okay, so less vehicles, I do less sales, I do less installations. But actually what I think that it's an opportunity for us to stop thinking about our business as selling units, how many units are sold, how many vehicles are equipped, but think about the value that we bring to end customers. It's important to think not only about the number of vehicles we equip, but also what each and every solution we install bring to the business of end customer. And sometimes it's actually the optimization, and it's actually the clear idea, okay, so I don't need actually that many vehicles, because I can do my deliveries, I can do the trips with lesser number of the vehicles. So again, here, I really see, that there is this as an opportunity to, change the mindset a little bit and think what each and every telematics unit can bring to the business of the end customer. And Maxime, that would be great if you can,
Yes, thank you. Well, that's a great point, actually. Totally agree with that. So in case I have not enough vehicles to do my job, I should optimize it somehow. And how should I optimize my fleets? Well, I probably should use telematics. And if I'm using telematics, I should take a closer look. What should I do else to improve the efficiency of my telematics system? That's what I think the main concern of the end user is. At the same time, the concern for the integrator and those who are affected by that supply chain malfunctions are the car dealers. And obviously, if they're not able to sell enough cars because, well, they don't have enough resources from the vendors, from the OEMs, they should do something to survive and to make their business running. So, and from the perspective we see that those car dealers are paying close attention to the telematic systems as the weapon for the upsell. So that's something they can upsell to the end user because, well, if I cannot sell the vehicle, then I should sell something. And telematic system is perfect for that. Recently, we had a case last year, by the way, it was quite an unpredicted one with one of our partners, the integrator company in Kazakhstan. They are working now with Toyota and Lexus car dealers. And the reason why they are doing this job is because the car dealer want to sell the cars, but the customers in the country are not all of them having the good credit history. Some of them having bad credit history, frankly speaking. So they don't pay the loans. And what they have proposed to that car dealer, what if we equip the vehicle you sell with telematic system, get to know to that client that wants to buy the car from you that the tracker is installed, and if he doesn't pay the loan at the time, we can block the engine and not let them drive it. So what if we do this way? The result is great. The guys who are having the bad credit history are able to buy the vehicle. A very good result. The car dealer who was afraid of selling the vehicle can sell the vehicle and earn money, which is also a great result. The integrator earns money because he did the job. He found a way to sell the telematics system to the niche which was never been used before. So, and the car dealers are constantly looking for these opportunities right now because, well, they don't have enough power to sell. They don't have enough goods to sell. And that's the idea. So luckily enough, our site, Galileosky, and as far as I know, Escort guys producing the sensors, we're not that harmed by the semiconductors deficit. But what we see around the globe is the vehicles which are not being delivered in time. And please put some mark in the chat if you tried to buy the new car during the last couple of months, and, well, tell us your story, what they told to you. So I think it's all the same anywhere in the world, but we should adopt, and the market adopts.
Okay, great. I think the other takeaway from this, and to pick up on one of the points that Ksenia made, that we as integrators need to think about, is that the shortage of semiconductors is also driving technology jumps. So I was talking with a client this afternoon about they are now using two words that I'd never used in this context before: swans and ducks. And what they're saying is that the swan, stay with what's available now, because if you look at the Wi-Fi market, the Wi-Fi went from 5 to 6 and now we're going to 6E, but the manufacturers of the Wi-Fi components are struggling with getting parts. So they're going to jump to version 7. They're going to skip 6 and 6E. So us as integrators need to be looking to the manufacturers like Escort, like Galileosky, and keeping up to date with what is actually going to be available. Because if we do get into some of these larger clients, we have to be able to make sure that we have continuity of supply. So on that point, Tim, what do you see as a manufacturer in this area?
Right. Thank you for asking. Yes, we can relate. Obviously, as the major manufacturer, we have to get into the procurement of the components quite ahead of time. So then in 2021, we planned the procurement for 2022. And obviously, we have met with certain price increase and even deficit of the components. You know what? It actually pushed us to find some new ways of communication with the sensor. A simple example, we have introduced the new model of the same wired sensor.
I think we've lost Tim.
Yeah, unfortunately, it happened.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
he'll get back. Hope.
So, Maxime, from your perspective, what do you see as picking up on Tim's point about the disruption of the supply chains? What advice would you give to integrators as how they should be planning for their inventories and their projects?
Yeah, what we always suggest to our partners is to be as close to us at this uncertain time as possible. The sooner we have information, the sooner we have, the more opportunity we have to do actually the project. Because, well, sometimes it's absolutely impossible to get the devices delivered within a month. Because, well, the lead time for some of the components might be 6 months or even 12 months, whatever. So as soon as we know about the project and about the stages of moving on the projects, the better it is, because once we have the information, we can act accordingly with our suppliers. So here the story is very simple. The first who comes for the certain amount of components gets it. So that's it. But we should be sure that we have it, and we should be in very close contact with the partners about the project they have. So that's the main point from our side. But that. Luckily enough, we are once again we are fine with that at this moment, and we have survived through to 2021, not delaying the supplies very much, and all the devices were available at the moment. But well, it's not yet over, so we should be very cautious about each other. We should be cautious about the projects of integrators. Integrators should be cautious about what really the vendor should make for them. So that's the point.
Maxime, so Tim has come back, so you can pick up from where you left off, Tim.
Yeah, the usual way, the internet just glitched a bit. So yeah, as I was saying, as we have to plan right ahead of time, what we're gonna get, what kind of the chips and the micro components we have to get for the equipment. So we have to plan ahead. And what happened? There was an example. We've introduced Bluetooth connectivity into the wired sensor, which caused a bit of the questions at first. But why we did this? Because actually we were met with the deficit of a specific chip, which allows wired communication to the configuration tool. Instead of trying to procure it at more expensive price, we've decided to introduce Bluetooth connectivity to the wired sensor, so that we can connect to the wired sensor by the smartphone app and configure it. Yeah, and this is the way to go, improvising and planning ahead of time, obviously. So we didn't meet that bad of the problem. We make quite a simple device, but I know guys like Galileosky, it's a very complex device that you guys manufacture, so it also takes some planning, I'm sure.
Yes, indeed. Our logistics doing great. All right.
Great, thanks, Tim. So, Ksenia, given that Gurtam is basically a software developer, how do you, as a developer, also keep pace with what's happening in the the changes and the advances that are happening within the sensor and the tracker market itself?
First of all, of course, we stick to our motto. We are hardware agnostic. And of course, we are open to the integrations of the new solutions that come to the market. And of course, we are, in touch with partners that, okay, so I need this and that solution integrated with VLO, and I have this project. For sure, we will be ready to engage. And when it comes to solution providers, like our major, technology partners like Galileosky here, like Escort, of course, we are ready to support their new solutions the moment they are, ready to share technical documentation with us. So we don't expect any, direct demands from customers. And I think that's the strategy that helps us and VLO partners also to navigate the difficult times when you have to improvise, and you have to think what to do if the solution I'm used to is not available at the moment.
One of the other areas that also is starting to move in this market is electrification. So we're now seeing the movement into electric motorbikes, electric cars, and now I've already seen the electric vehicles coming with swappable batteries. So no longer do you have to sit there and charge at a charging station. You turn up at a station and basically swap out the car battery itself. So a 3-minute turnaround is what they're now chasing. So Ksenia, can you give us a bit of insight into what, from a Wheelon perspective, you're seeing changes that this electrification will bring?
Yeah, I do agree with you that we would see the increase of the electrification, and from our perspective, that change is driven by different factors at the same time. So we do see, on one hand, the state regulators that are committing to introduce more electric vehicles. They are committing to cut carbon emission. And for example, the US is planning to have 50% of the vehicles they have as electric ones by 2030. So that's definitely will drive the change. And at the same time, I think that's an impact of the COVID-19. And we do see the increase of the urban mobility, electrified urban mobility. We see a lot of people that are searching for alternative ways of transportation in the cities. They want to have a safe and independent way to navigate the city, and the municipalities, they're also investing in this area. And I think that would definitely drive the change. And I think that that's also, a nice push for us and for solution providers in the industry to see what other features or other solutions I can offer, because fuel won't be there until the end of the day. So we will see more and more electric mobility, what we can offer to those customers.
Okay, great, thanks. So Tim, as a supplier of sensors, how do you see the impact of electrification on the sensor business?
Well, let me begin with, I most certainly hope that diesel will stay here for a bit. While I do agree with you guys about the electric mobility for the personal use, we see plenty of electrical vehicles. We see good big manufacturers, switching their lines, assembly lines, even converting the gasoline engine engineered cars into the electrical type. But I think when we talk about heavy machinery, specifically, not even transportation, but mostly construction, mining and things and so on, in my opinion, and many people do agree with this, that it will stay longer to be powered on by diesel longer than the regular vehicles, because for some technology, no, not so advanced. The battery technology is not so advanced as we know. However, our company does some developments of additional sensors that we might be discussing this later on, about how much information people now want. So it's not only the fuel that we are able to monitor. We can monitor temperature, humidity, rotation, axle load, weather parameters by autonomous weather stations. We could monitor. We're also working on the industrial gas analyzers. So it's all interconnected. It's all sensors. We still make sensors. Maybe sometime in the future, our company will move away from the fuel level sensors. Maybe they will become obsolete. But I think for the heavy machinery, it's still going to be quite enough for for us young professionals to be able to sell them, to manufacture them.
Okay, great. So, Maxime, from your perspective as a supplier of the devices that connect the sensors and then connect into the subsystems of the vehicles, how do you see that electrification from a Galileosky perspective?
That's definitely. But first of all, I agree with Tim. I totally agree that fuel will be with us for some time. So not till the end of our days, but for quite a while. But the market for electrical vehicles is growing. And we should take that into consideration, developing the solutions we have. So from perspective of the GPS tracker, nothing is being changed actually. So there is the same CAN bus, so we can receive the same data from the CAN bus. There is the same resources that should be saved. Electrical power is the second resource at the cost after fuel actually in most of the companies. So it is also should be saved and controlled somehow. We also should help the drivers to drive the better route, to drive the better performance, doing it more safely. So these challenges are still there, but this is actually the place where the integrator might be creative enough to suggest something else to these guys who are doing the electric transport or are using the electric transport. So for example, recently I had a talk with the company who is producing AVAS systems, ADAS systems, so it's quite a widespread thing, but AVAS is something I have never heard before, but it's quite widespread thing around the world already. The problem with electric transport, it is too silent. It is unsafely silent. So the people around don't hear the vehicle while it is moving. So in many countries, the legislation now becomes a very, very strict to the electric vehicles and making them become a bit noisy. So the thing that people and human is used to, the vehicle should make some noise. And here is the story behind that. So we are doing some project for car sharing for electric vehicles in some of the countries. And at the same time, we are discussing the opportunity to be integrated with the AVAS systems. So we can modify the volume, the sound, the volume of the sound inside the city and outside the city, do something else, deliver CAN data to this block, more CAN data to this block, so it can react accordingly to get some firmware update whatsoever. And then we decide with the solution that the car sharing provider might offer to the end user who is actually using that electric vehicle. Why not to insert in the application they use to order that Tesla the solution that will help them to choose the sound of the vehicle. So not only the regular engine vehicle, but it can sound like UFO. So just for fun. And why not to charge extra money for that? They can. Will somebody buy that? Definitely. So that's, well, the place for the creativity. We are doing the same job on the same four wheels. The engine is a bit different and the tasks are a bit different, but how creative you are is the main thing. So that's the idea.
Okay, so that allows the integrators to look some innovative ways of adding noise to the actual vehicle. And I can relate to you don't hear them. When I was in China and they have electric motorbikes, you really have to have your wits around you because you just don't hear them coming. So on that point, you also touched about the ADAS. So Ksenia, I want to hand this over to you. What, from a developer perspective, do you see around the video world and AI? So the things around the behavior management, the ADAS systems, where do you see that market sort of heading in 2022?
Yeah, video telematics is the boss, definitely. So everybody around talks about that as some of the next step, probably the next step before the vehicles to become autonomous. So right now we understand and we see the market as not just sending the video flow to the server just for the sake of the video flow. It's not a very essential thing probably right now. What is the most important in all this story about video telematics is how can you understand that something is going wrong. And ADAS and DMS, driver management system, is something which is, well, definitely bring a lot of different revenues to the integrators in 2022. These systems are now being combined with different telematic systems. So, for example, from our side, we've been integrated with few brands who are doing the ADAS systems, and we deliver the alerts to Via Alone. And, well, the fleet owners may decide what's going wrong. Is it the real alert, and see the image of the driver or of the road, and to make decision on whether to find the driver or not, and do some stuff actually with that. So so that's the idea. We are all emerging. There's different parts of telematics market, so we cannot say that well, MDVR is the one thing and that's it. So before it was MDVR sending data to its proprietary server, which is actually was used before. Now it's a bit different. It's about artificial intelligence that will analyze what happens on the road and give the fleet owner a very good information to make their decisions. So that's what we see about this particular topic, and it's clearly a buzz. So that's something that will drive it.
Okay, so Ksenia, from a software developer's perspective, the challenge for now starting to work with AI type systems and being able to send commands and configure the system, especially when yesterday I was talking to a technology company that's now talking about dynamic AI. So the ability to customize the AI to actually suit the environment that the driver is in. So what are your thoughts as far as what are the sorts of challenges that a developer will have, as well as how they would advise their partners on how to make use of this technology?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I definitely agree with Maxime that the market of videos is changing rapidly. And when we first integrated maybe one of the first devices, the customers were asking for streaming video. I want to connect to connect to the camera and see what's happening in a cockpit. Now the customers, they are way more sophisticated. They understand that it's not the right use of any IoT solution, because the manager should be aware about the bad things going on. The manager doesn't need to connect, to watch the driver 24/7. And that's definitely the change that we see. And this change is also driven by the companies that come from autonomous driving field. The solution providers that initially started to create video AI solutions for autonomous vehicles, they are starting to push forward the aftermarket solutions too. And speaking about the challenges, of course, it's quite tricky for us to be hardware agnostic and at the same time have a video module, because each integration demands from us a considerable amount of time and effort. But again, that's something that we committed to do for our partners quite some time ago, and we are not planning, to step away from this promise. But definitely the challenges for the software developer in the field is to find the right video partners and to concentrate the development of efforts specifically on the solutions that will drive this change, that will bring added value to integrators, because not all AIs are equal. And that's the tricky point. Again, talking to partners, learning more about their technology, and also, talking to customers, asking what their need, and then, we have to, prioritize and engage with the high quality solution providers. And that's definitely something that we are doing right now.
Okay, so as a sort of a futuristic question, do you ever see a capability where the AI can adapt itself to the type of vehicle that it's actually being put in? As an example, if I'm a driver of a light vehicle, a car, the getting a distraction alert is based on me not watching the road. But if I'm working on a crane or I'm working on an excavator, my dwell time of looking sideways, it's part of what I have to do on my business. So if the AI can't adapt to that situational, sort of its situational awareness, do you think that could be an opening for a software developer to say, okay, you enter this type of vehicle, I do the interfacing to the AI, and I will now configure the AI based on the vehicle type?
I think that's something that we should expect in the future, that it looks to me like an obvious next step, because what is the AI? Basically, AI is learning from the data that it receives. And the moment the software developer starts to focus on the particular situations, on the particular, vehicle types, and to create different patterns for the AI, the situation that you are describing would be definitely possible. But I think that's definitely a question that should be addressed to visual solution providers like Seeing Machines, like StreamX, like other guys that we are working with.
Okay.
Well, so as far as as far as I know, it already exists. I know some of the brands which you should calibrate before actually go into the field, because they sell the equipment to any part of the world, to any country, and the road signs, the roads themselves are different. So the ADAS system should learn where am I, to understand how to actually react to each of the violation that happens. So it already exists, and that particular case with the crane or excavator or whatever is a very good point, and that's a good idea for them to enhance the system if it doesn't exist. But that's the question that we should ask them, definitely. Okay. Next time we will introduce them here. So yeah.
Okay, so this dynamic configurability is something that we think the manufacturers will look at. So Tim, from your perspective, where do you see the sensors fitting in to help AI either develop the events that would trigger, say, a video, or even trigger some type of a condition change, as well as becoming aware of its environment?
That's a very interesting question. As a matter of fact, we thought of various scenarios. So it's not exactly an AI, but it's more of telling the sensor ahead of time what environment is going to be installed into. For instance, if you use the same sensor, angle rotation sensor, for the bucket, for the excavator bucket, it has to take into the account the time delays, changes in the degree, and like freezing of the excavator arm for a long time. If you install the same sensor on the garbage collection, that's a completely different scenario. So the way I see it, coming back to the example that you mentioned, If the sensor is installed on an excavator or the same sensor is installed on the crane, now I'm talking about angle and rotation sensor, it will use different scenarios. So in first case, it's going to be time delays, it's going to be several thresholds. In a second, for the dump truck, it's going to be just one threshold if it's full or empty. That's what it's going to be. There was a case, one of our partners in Latin America, they used the angle sensor for the crane, for the automotive crane, to detect whether the crane arm was in a transportation position, flat, or it was in up and running position. So to avoid the situations when you could start driving the crane and your arm is all the way up, then you hit something like a bridge, or you just fall over, or like some power lines. So the sensor can send you a command. It will not actually disable, but it will can set a command, like an event. So then your buzzer can go off, depending on the integrator. So the way I see it, we can set up various scenarios. So then sensor would know, okay, I'm on the bucket of the excavator. Direct communication to the hardware device is probably not, has to be, a lot of integration has to be done, but I think it's quite possible through the software. The arm is up, don't move, and then if it moves, the driver is inside of the cabin, and it's the video telematics can see the driver inside of the cabin. That's a violation and a dangerous one. So yeah, the way I see it in the middle, like transitioning point, is creating the scenarios, most possible scenarios, perhaps allowing people to create their own scenarios by using, I don't know, easy logic maybe.
Okay, so so you also mentioned about the integrators being aware of how the sensors can be used in different ways. So I was talking to one customer who tried the AI in their early days, and he had a different sort of translation for what AI stood for, and his translation was another idiot, because if it's not configured right, then it can cause a lot of problems, especially if it's triggering some sort of condition automation. So, Maxime, what do you think about the where and how integrators should be thinking about how to work with devices and with AI in the future? So what they should be thinking about from a knowledge perspective?
Well, I think the main thing here is not to do AI for the sake of AI. The main thing to do is understand what the customer needs. So in case if they understand, if the integrator sees the potential that some AI system or just probably some simple program might help the client in their business process, they should do that, definitely. We have the cases when even not the AI, but Easy Logic helped the retailer to understand where they can actually unload the truck and to let open the truck actually and to unload the vehicle, because they should do it next to the shop. But based on GFN's time of a day, when it should have arrived, one wire RFID card, the device made the decision whether to open or not the door of the cargo. So that's sometimes it's not even about AI, it's more about seeing what exactly the customer wants, not only what they need. So to see the potential, what next step they can do. Not for the sake of AI, for the sake of the customer. So that's the idea.
Okay. So so AI itself, we should be able to look at that as an opportunity as implementers and integrators to come up with innovative ways of basically skinning the same cat, just doing it in a smarter way, and in a way that not only adaptable for the customer, but that actually what we talk to customers about is capability to implement. It's pointless us putting a very technically savvy solution in the middle of a jungle. I mean, because there's no way we can support it. I mean, it's really going to cop a hiding. So one of the takeaways that we found with working with some of the technology is, actually make it adaptable to what you have. Sometimes it's not necessarily the most technologically advanced, like Swan. Stay with what's available now, because putting something heavy in there, it's going to cause you a world of hurt. Okay, so for the participants, remember you can ask questions that we can then look at later on after the session if there's certain things that you want the speakers to touch on a bit more, or a topic that we haven't maybe potentially looked at. So for all of this stuff to work, we have to have connectivity. So that connectivity space is also changing. We're seeing LoRa, we're seeing, Tim, as you mentioned, BLE and the different flavors of BLE, Wi-Fi and 5G. So we're now seeing a lot of telcos starting to move into that that 5G area. So maybe if I can start with you, Ksenia, what do you think about the impact from a software developer's perspective of having the capability of 5G?
Well, from the software developer perspective, we would definitely see an increase of data that we are receiving. So the more widespread 5G would become, the easier it would be for the end customers to gather different types of data from different units, like different objects that they connect to this connectivity. And that would definitely drive the development of different BI reports that will help the managers to take more sophisticated, more based decisions. And at the same time, we will see more and more solutions that use machine learning to navigate through this huge wave of data which is coming to a software, because at some point the person, the manager, is not enough to channel all this information, and you need an artificial intelligence to process all this information.
Okay. So, Maxime, from a device developer perspective, the changes that are happening in the telecommunications market, so movements from 2G, 3G, 3.5G, 4G, now 5G, what are some of the challenges that you as a provider see, especially when you get different flavors of, like we have in 4G, we have Cat 1, we have Cat 1M, some work in some countries, some don't work in other countries. So what are some of the heads up that you could give to the people who are on the webinar about what 5G can bring and what may be some of the challenges?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a very good one. From what we see, the main thing that we should take into consideration that 2G or sometimes even 3G are being shut down in many countries around the globe. That's the fact. So somewhere in some places you cannot reach any connectivity not having at least 4G module on. So the governments are restricting importing other than 4G trackers already in many countries. So that's the process which is ongoing. And well, if someone from the audience have not yet faced this issue, probably in few years you will face it. I think it is 100% that it will happen in some time. So 2G is there in most of the countries, 3G also, but from the in long term, if you consider installing the tracker with 2G, the lifespan of it might be not that long as we expect it to happen now. It's very good if the government decide to shut down 2G gradually. It's very good, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. So it's good to be prepared to that. So if we can have a long-term plan, it's better to get something which we call new generation connectivity. 5G is there, but mainly on the exhibition leaflets. So personally, from our side, we have not yet seen a lot of 5G models which we can deploy on the tracker, and practically we have not seen any use in that, because even 2G is enough to actually prepare and to send enough amount of data, and 4G capabilities are not yet 100% open for most of us. And just another example, a few days ago, I had a meeting with one company that has a very great plan, and now it seems not like a dream. It seems something like very realistic. So there are some startups, or even not startups, but some companies who gained some decent investments that are now planning to run satellites to the orbit. So, but the satellites for the connectivity, and not for the simple connectivity, but for 4G. So imagine that in 2, 3, 4 years, the same device, which you practically can buy already now, with the firmware update, may be communicating with the server via the satellite at the cost of cellular communication. And that's something that seems to be quite a realistic thing, because 4G range is enough. In this particular case, we are talking about NB-IoT. So its range is enough to reach the satellite in the space. It's enough of the power of the device, of the components to run that firmware, which will at the dedicated band communicate over the satellite with the Earth. So it's very realistic that it will happen in a very soon time. You see that where the same Starlink system, the satellites are already there. We can see it on the skies, and they will give us the internet in any part of the world. So, and the same thing, and it's 4G for the connectivity, for the IoT, which can happen because it has enough power for that. So, so here are 2 points mainly. One point is that 2G and sometimes 3G is being shut down, and 4G is not yet fully deployed to be totally replaced by 5G just for the sake of 5G. So that's a few of the points from my side.
Okay, I think that's an important point as well. I think I've seen some documents from the International Telecommunications Union talking about maintaining 2G, where all we really want is just basically messaging, and getting rid of 3G and actually utilizing 4G. Because we have one question from Baba about that when we do change the technologies, the costs are going to go up. So as we move from 2G devices to 3G or 4G or 5G, the economies of scale for a manufacturer look very, very different. And the investments that they've made in board design and in modem, the modem capabilities, that maybe the 5G devices are great, but we don't have a market for it. Or if we do have a market, it's not going to pay for it. So, Tim, from your perspective as a sensor player, does the ability to transmit basically globs of data at lightning speed, does that influence what you do with your sensors? So, are we going to get sensors that give us 1,000 parameters where we can go into analysis paralysis for the rest of our lives?
You're right. I see this a demand for big amount of data for somebody who is very new in the field. They just discovered sensorizing everything, so they want this massive amount of data every second. But then at the end of the day, they have to pay the SIM card bill, and they cool down a bit. So they realize they don't really have to have all this huge amounts of data. We're not talking about video telematics now, though. We are talking about just events, like angle or fuel or temperature. My expertise in this case would be close range communications, so to say. It would be Bluetooth, it would be LoRa, it would be BLE connectivity. Yes, and also there is a demand for the longer range, like LoRa, stands for long range. We have a few devices like LoRa base station and the LoRa transmitters, and if it's a clear line of sight, the communication range between them could be up to 10 kilometers. I mean, in ideal conditions, so that's quite fascinating, I think. Also, people demand for the better connectivity of the sensors, BLE sensors. So there is a Bluetooth 5.0 technology, also Bluetooth 5.0 long range. Yes, it's most definitely is developing. And I can agree. I experienced 5G in Dubai once. I took the SIM card that they gave it to me. I put it in my smartphone. It instantly became 5G. I enjoyed it for like a few seconds, and then the traffic was gone. Like a test gigabyte was gone. That's it. Yeah, I don't know. We will have to see. Most likely in some foreseeable future, we will be transferring huge amounts of data. Maybe it will become cheap, or maybe we will used to pay that amount of money for these modems. Some devices that we will manufacture, like fuel level sensor with built-in GPS and GSM modem, it will use some chipsets that are from the future. They're not being manufactured yet. So we are yet to see. We are yet to get into this field, and it's going to be a 4G. So 3G, in my understanding, is just slow internet. 2G is SMS, and 4G is something we could be seeing in a very close future everywhere.
Okay, so given what's happening around this this whole area around the wireless communications and all the other things that we're now touching, one of the questions that we have is what is going to happen in regards to cybersecurity around these different trends? Are we going to see hackers shift their focus from PCs and the normal networks to now going after smart devices? So what's your thoughts on that, Tim?
It's a question specifically for a lot of programmers and a lot of people who deal in IT, younger people. They are very much concerned about it. What's going to happen if somebody is going to hack into my vehicle? There is most definitely that type of the concern, especially if the tracking devices and installed hardware allows for things like immobilization of the vehicle. You can kill the engine by hacking into it. In some cases, our sensors, somebody might try to to hack into the sensor, to change some kind of the parameter. I guess the answer is still the same. Encryption, it's like a war. Somebody tries to get into your vault, and you just make your locks more reliable. So on every criminal talent, there's going to be some good talent. So yeah, I think it's all about making encryption more sophisticated, making devices less less accessible by those hackers.
Okay. So one of the other items on that, so Maxime, from a hardware, the device manufacturer side, what do you see as being some of the things that could be put in place to guard against this potential hacking of the systems?
Well, we should stay autonomous, seems so. So it's hard for the tracker to stay autonomous from the fleet management platform because, well, we should deliver data there. So we should have the connection as much as possible and to bring as much data as possible as well. But just like Tim mentioned, encryption is the key, and the key of encryption for encryption should be stored from those guys, from those thieves actually. But another thing about security and cybersecurity, which I thought about, is some laws in some governments that are making the clients, especially the governmental clients, to leave the data inside the country. So not letting any data to go through the border. And that's what we already capable of, not only placing the fleet management servers inside of the country, but also all the device firmware servers, or to run the configuration within the country. It's all possible already. So from the perspective of the country, we are more or less safe because, well, we are not that affected by intrusion from the third-party country because we keep the data inside the borders. But from the sake of from like how to call these guys, bad guys, let's call them simple. So it's very hard to make the universal lock. We're trying because we are having the encryptions, and we definitely keep that in mind, developing any other firmware we do. But well, there is always the risk. There is always the risk, definitely. So that's it.
Okay. So, Ksenia, from your perspective about the and probably the question why I asked about smart AI. So, is AI maybe something that can look at pattern matching of particular sensors and define a profile for that sensor, and then if it gets something out of that where a hacker has been able to get in, and one of the things on a hacker, it's not always they want to change data. Some of it is denial of service. They'll take that device or that sensor off air. So we use a jammer at the moment to block GPS and block GSM. So where do you think could AI be an aid to help us looking at whether or not a message stream has been manipulated?
Well, first of all, I would say that there are a lot of solutions on the market which are existing already to assure the security of the connection between your IoT devices and the platform, because a lot of connectivity providers, they are already thinking about that. They are already, taking care about that. And that's something which is already exists. Talking about the AI, I think that probably this technology can be used to detect some unusual patterns for the IoT device or a user. But again, that's something that that an IA provider would be able to answer.
Okay, because I think I think also when we start looking about cybersecurity, the threat is not always external. The bigger threat is from internal employees. So a hacker doesn't have to hack anything. An employee can give them access credentials to either get in and configure a device or open up access via a number of different paths. So what do we think about how the companies or us as integrators should be having that discussion about the protection of the devices from internal hackers?
And if you don't mind, I kind of would be first to answer. And I think that's a conversation that should be switched from technology to people, to working with people, to working with your employees, and making sure that you have a trust towards the people that are accessing IoT devices installed in customer vehicles. And that's something that starts not from AI, not from the technology, but from working with the right people. And after that, of course, that's about setting internal protocols, setting the way that the password should be changed to the laptop, creating the protocols, how you operate with the data of your customers, and how you respect GDPR, for example, if you're a European-based company. But from my perspective, everything starts from people, not from a particular technology.
Okay. So there's a question asked about, with all of this technology coming in, where do we see things like edge-based computing happening? So from my perspective, we don't have connectivity all the time. I mean, we can't rely, going back to a to a server. And it also touches on another question that we have about where should the AI processing take place? Because for us, a SaaS model requires connectivity. Well, if I'm in a plantation or I'm in a mine site, I don't have that luxury of having connectivity. So from our perspective, we are definitely looking at edge to make the devices become the smart part of the whole thing, and then relying on the platforms to update the devices when I do have connectivity. So basically autonomous devices that still do all the same functionality as what we're getting now, but can run literally on their own. So Maxime, from your perspective, is that something that Galileosky is looking at as a manufacturer?
Well, that's what we made our business on, actually. So many of those who are attending this webinar probably know about EasyLogic technology, and many of those are the active users of it. And that's actually edge computing. That's what we stand on as the company. What we understand from our side that it is not enough for us right now to be just a GPS tracker. It's not enough just to ping the location after some time on some schedule and to, well, probably send some sensors data. It's not enough for us. What we want to give our clients and what we want to give our partners is the opportunity to create as flexible systems as possible to fine-tune their solutions to the end user's expectations. So it means that the device, the tracker, definitely should be programmable, not only configurable. And to make that happen, it's very crucial not to make a very complex system out of it. So from our side, we decided to stick with the no code. So the thing that actually the students in school right now are being taught to. So the children are 13, 14 years old. They are able to program some logic on their laptops, just drag and drop some algorithms and creating some chain of events and reactions. And well, we did the same. So the integrators might adopt this technology to their self as soon as possible. It is about connectivity, so we should perform some logic when there is no GSM. Only around 10% of the surface of the Earth are the cities. So you can imagine how many blank spots we are still having. So it is also about data traffic savings. For example, when we talk about the same Iridium communication, and we cannot have a luxury of sending each message and every data to the server via satellite right now, in 2022 at least. But we can compute some logic on the device side to send just, well, for example, the counter of amount of violations that happen during last 2 hours and send one message per 2 hours, but not sending each violation, and to save money on that. There are a lot of different applications when we can use edge computing or fog computing, and that's becoming a very essential thing. And well, the biggest quantity of our partners are benefiting from that, just fine-tuning the system to what the customer really needs. So that's what we have.
Okay. So given that we are getting a lot of now huge leaps in the miniaturization, the power of chipsets that are coming now, from your perspective, Tim, do you see where we will end up with actually smart sensors that do a lot of the work that the devices are currently doing, and the device simply acts as a message router?
Yes, sure. How do we see it happening? There is a definitely there is a, when we make some kind of equipment, it's usually as a response to a certain request from the typically from the integrators community. And while we can pack a lot of features in a sensor, we shouldn't forget that the sensor by itself, the prime goal for the sensor is to stay alive on the places like crane boom or fuel tank. While for the computer, which I can call Galileosky device, not exactly the GPS tracker, but a mini computer, it should be in a bit more protected place, which is the truck cabin. While in some sensors like BLE sensors, since it's autonomous, it allowed us to add a few very interesting features. And coming back to the question of the security, a black box. We had the case of the installation of those devices, BLE fuel level sensors, in the diesel gensets. And there was a power failure when GPS trackers stopped sending any data to the platform. So they came there to check. By accessing the built-in memory of the sensor, they were able to download the table of events. So what happened, and they were able to pinpoint the time exactly, and the fuel was drained, and the power loss happened. So this is one of the backup options, more or less a way for the smart sensor to develop. So right now we are on a stage where we have the sensor that can memorize things and then can report you those things, by the manual, access. We hope to get into integration, some ways to push this data to the server once the connection is reestablished. So more like download the black box. And yes, there is a certain way of the smartness in the sensors already, like filtration, like, for example, canceling wrong events, the possibility of the hardware filtration or thermal compensation, for example, when sensor by itself compensates for the contraction and expansion of the fuel, for instance, in the fuel tankers. And the angle sensor, for instance, could cancel the event when the excavator operator just kind of moved the arm of the excavator, but not enough. So the sensor will not report this event because it was not an actual useful work. Temperature humidity sensors that we make also, they have built-in memories. So basically you can drop one along with the shipment and then ship it to another country and then open it up in another country and see what was the temperature dynamics, humidity dynamics, was the package opened or not. And yes, the sensor has to be protected. So we are kind of balancing on this kind of necessity for the sensor to be durable, and they have to live a very, very long life. Sometimes service life of the sensor could be 8 to 10 years. I mean, we've seen some our sensors and other manufacturers that came back on a vehicle after 10 years still functional. So yeah, that would be an answer. The sensors will never become so smart as the computing device, and never so smart as the artificial intelligence of the of the software.
Okay, so going back to the same question that I put to Ksenia about the software being able to configure AI, do you ever see a position or in the future where the sensors become aware of each other? So the sensors can form a sensor mesh. Like you said, here are some sensors that can talk to each other and determine whether or not a particular condition is a condition of interest or an alert that we should have, or talk to the computing device, to the processor, to say, hey, I've got a situation that you need to be aware of. So would you, Tim, ever see sensors being that aware?
My bad. Well, you see, I don't think so, to be honest, because what we have, there is I would say the telematics would be divided in 3 layers. So we have the bottom layer, which is the sensor. The next layer is the gateway, and the top layer is computing, artificial intelligence software. So if I take the sensor as the nail or the screw, so the main idea of the nail or the screw to be, to hold the structure together. So we do work on a certain type of the device, which is a fuel level sensor with a built-in GPS and GSM module. But let me tell you, it's quite challenging, because now we have to make this device to work on the fuel tank, and some of our partners from Africa and from equatorial places, they know it gets very hot on the fuel tank. It gets very hot on places like fuel tank of the excavator working on the mining site or on a quarry. So then certain challenges are there, and it's the best for now to focus on the durability and the data stability that comes from the sensor. So this is where we are now, and I think it's going to be like that for quite foreseeable future.
Okay, so the given that side of it around the durability, so from our experience, it's important for you to understand what the device is going to be deployed in, so that maybe an integrator has to look at the environment and maybe do some changes to allow the device or the sensors to go in. So where you may add additional coatings of conformal coating, where to protect devices, we've done this before. Wrap it in a tissue, conformal coat the whole thing in a tissue. I can drop that in a tank of water, and it's not going to get affected. Where we have vibration that could upset the device, we wrap them in bubble wrap and install them with bubble wrap on them. It's not the best looking solution, but it works. So that thinking about the simplicity of not everything is going to go back to the device or the sensor. The integrator has to think about each of the different areas where this thing is actually going to be deployed. So one of the challenges for us is the soft touch coatings that they put on devices. They last about 6 months. They go sticky. When they go sticky, we are in a very dusty environment. The dust then collects on the device. The heat dissipation from the device is now no longer good, and the device ends up frying itself. Mm-hmm. So those sorts of things, when an integrator is looking at it, needs to be sort of aware. So where, if anywhere, do you see different areas where telematics can now be used in this new connected world, outside of the traditional track and trace and sense areas? So Maxime, what's your thoughts?
Well, that's a better answer, but I would say anywhere. So, well, it's already there. We sometimes face such cases that we could not ever expect it from being able to actually deploy it, and that we never expected it is a problem. So even though sometimes it happens that our partners are coming to the end user, doing their job in fleet management, looking around and seeing something which is not working good, and well, they are offering what we do well for fleet management, and finally it becomes a working solution that saves their money or optimizes their processes or automates something. So it means that, well, it's anywhere. The main question is how to find it. And probably the answer, well, not a silly answer, but the answer would be ask. Just ask the clients what happens around, what pains they have, and think about what you can do for them. That's the main approach I can suggest in this particular case. From what we had some very unusual but very simple things. For example, you know that those billboards that are changing the advertisement from time to time, a very simple solution. We can track what was the time of showing each and every advertisement. So, and based on that report, we can actually bill the end user by a specific amount of money, saying him, all right, your potential clients saw your advertisement for so much time. Simple as that. Just one input giving us the voltage from this system. That's it, nothing else. And well, it's anywhere in the world. We can think of anything around that happens. Just give us the information what happens with machinery or some aggregate or whatever, and we can send it to monitoring platform and to give you the report. And well, simple as that.
Okay, so from your perspective, Ksenia, what do you see? I mean, where are some out-of-the-box solutions that we could look at a telematics platform to do?
So I also would like to agree with Maxime, because everywhere we can use IoT devices and the instruments for monitoring different parameters, sending notifications, running reports. These are like the universal tools, like a screwdriver that you can use for any kind of project you're working in. Talking about unusual cases, we had a project with a customer that wanted to monitor what's happening with the computers and laptops that the employees take out of the office when they start to work remotely. And strangely, that's where he used, the telematics tool and simple tracking devices to track laptops and to know whether the employees are actually staying within the country, staying within the city that they need to stay, and what's happening during the working hours. And these are like the examples, like one of the projects that Maxime mentioned, for example. These are just the examples that we are, as vendors, we are gathering, and we are trying to show our customers, show our added value distributors what can be done with our solutions. Because if the telematics provider doesn't have any ideas, it's enough to see what other telematics providers are doing in the same country or even somewhere abroad. And that's basically one of the reasons why we launched IoT Project of the Year competition. That's of course we wanted to to reward the ingenuity of the integrators, but again we wanted to push our customers to look into different niches of telematics and maybe to start switching from their traditional niches and see what other areas they can work in and where they can be successful when they feel that the market becomes too saturated.
Okay, so how much of this finding the opportunities comes from the integrators sort of looking at other areas? I mean, as an example, we did some testing on what can we do to break whale on. So we had a situation where we had a customer, and we had 31 above ground tanks sending 6 parameters each. And our challenge was, can we visualize this in whale-on using one unit, which we actually could do. So by thinking about what are we actually trying to do, rather than thinking about it as a telematics problem, we then started to look at, first of all, we're dealing with sensors that are large above ground tank sensors. So how do we get the data? How do we get the data? From their application. We created our own parser, passed that information across into whale-on, came up with our numbering schema, and we could import in one message 244 parameters. Our problem was they looked pretty ugly in the visualization. So the application not designed to do that. But what it did prove to us is that when we were looking at the messages and starting to think about looking at what was coming in the message, rather than saying, okay, how much can I jam into this message, this now has opened up a whole new scope of thought for us on taking external data coming from completely different systems and visualizing it in the telematics platform. Now, it may not be ideal, but they've already got the telematics platform. It's a no-brainer from our perspective. So how much of that do the speakers think that integrators have to sort of be prepared to take some risk and burn some time in looking at what's possible in their particular environments? Because I'm sure their competitors are doing it. So Tim, what's your thoughts?
Let me tell you quickly one story. There was we shouldn't forget about why we want to put the sensor and the tracking device and see this on the platform. In most cases, we want to find a hole where the money is leaking. So we want to optimize. We want to find out where we are losing. Maybe somebody steals fuel. Maybe somebody doesn't observe the safety. Or uses the vehicle for wrong purposes. And there was one case which is, I found, very original use of our equipment. We have tag, active tag, and the reader. And there was a case from Bulgaria. They actually had fishing vessels, 200 fishing vessels, 10, 12 meter long, and they would belong to pro-government kind of a company. So they would go out in the sea for fishing purposes, and coming back, they would sell a large amount of this fish to the to the private entities, let's say. So the boats would become, small boats would become swarming to this fishing vessel, and then on the shore they would bring the smaller amount. So there was a hole, the money was leaking there, the fish. And they've decided to utilize the reader and the tag in the following way. They attached the tag to the net, to the fishing net, and the reader was attached to the ship, mast of the ship. And when actually Galileosky trackers were there too, because I've seen the setup. They were there installed as well. And when the connection between the tag and the reader was lost, that was a signal that the fishing operation has started. And then when they pulled the net up, the connection was reestablished. It was just one of the tools for them to find out how long and where, obviously, the fishing operation was carried out. And yeah, there you go. That's quite an original way of the operating, answering this question: where do you see it could be used where we did not see it before? In most cases, it would be solving a money issue, like optimization of the business process. So I think that's why we install the sensors. That's why we install tracking devices. And I remember there was one case from Maxim about the greenhouse. Yeah, the tracking devices for operating the greenhouse, opening and closing the door. So yeah, anywhere you want to install the telematics system, to solve the problem, it will do.
Okay, so probably leading on from that, I've already asked the question about about the smart sensors, and we actually do have a question about whether or not the sensors can be smart enough to configure themselves and be able to be aware of what their environment is. But what about from the software side? So probably a question to you, Ksenia, to talk about, what are you seeing that the different types of companies that you're talking to at trade shows and whatever, what are they thinking about in regards to smart software?
I would say that we hear a lot about different machine learning solutions and AI solutions, which are implemented not only in video telematics, but also in, for example, driver behavior analysis. And that's also like one of the examples of a solution that combines video with other, sources of data. And we've met providers that actually gather the information from different sources, from telematics platform, from video device, from different additional sensors connected, and their AI helps the manager to find the patterns in the behavior of their drivers and to see the link between the status of the road, for example, and the quality of driving, how these are connected, and to actually create some prediction. What are the chances that this and that driver will, let's say, misbehave on the road? What is, like, what are the risks that he will often use his phone often, that he will overspeed, and so on and so forth. But again, the question is how smart this AI and how we can trust these predictions, and how the technology is ready, for the market to give the manager, the instructions how to operate. That's definitely an open question, and that's something that we would like to see and maybe to test in the future.
Okay, so where do you see, if without going into the realms of AI, what about the moving into areas of just simple predictive reporting? So the system being able to get all the messages that are coming in, and then the user being able, like Maxime said before, drag and drop type of capability. Here's, I want to put together this report. I want this algorithm to run. Where do you see that fitting into the simplification of smart software?
That definitely, it's kind of a paradox in itself, because it's a very complex solution, but at the same time, it really makes the life of the end user easier, and it minimizes, the number of settings you need to do, the number of different things you need to create and set up in the system, it definitely simplifies user experience, and it definitely, I would say, eases the job of the solution provider on how to show the benefit of telematics. But at the same time, if the system sets itself, if the hardware is already integrated, if everything works smoothly, AI does its job on the background, the question is, what would be the added value of a telematics provider? And that's also let's say the right time to think how telematics providers bring added value to the end users, and also to think maybe to see ourselves not as as we are selling this and that technology, but we are bringing added value to end customers. We are analyzing the requests of the end customers. We are searching deeply for the needs, and then we are kind of suggesting the tailor-made solution. We are not setting up the solution itself, but our job is in the expertise, is this initial analysis, and in this help in choosing the right provider, the right supplier. And that's something that would probably also impact in future the job of the telematics service provider, of the integrator, as I envision it.
Okay, so probably one of the leading questions from that, and probably direct this to Maxime, if we make the software smarter, and we make the devices self-configuring, and we make the sensors self-configuring, what role does an integrator have anymore? Because now the integrator provides a box and it sets itself up. The long ongoing revenue stream from that, and we're seeing this everywhere. Everything we see come out now is smarter, does it all itself, it'll self-configure. So it then becomes a massive price war on basically just getting the box into the hands of the user. But maybe that's a self-defeating purpose. What do you think?
Well, yes, plug and play, out of the box, whatever you call it, it's everywhere, and many of those who we hear are meaning integrators and fleet management providers, are expecting something like that from us. And that's a very essential expectation, because the simpler system is, the easier it is for them to deploy, and it's easier for them to scale it to the larger scale. So that's a very essential thing. But here's a controversial part of that. So from one side, yes, it is expected to be done simpler than ever, but at the same time, customer demands are being increasing all the time. So they are not already satisfied from what they were satisfied 2 or 3 years ago. They want something new because their competitors are having something new or are thinking of having something new. So they want to get some extra dollars saved or some extra minutes saved, whatever, but to be on the top of that wave. So that's kind of controversial thing we should somehow fight off, and there are a few ways out of it, probably. So from what we do and what the other vendors here are doing is providing as much of flexibility to the integrators as possible. Gurtam is doing a great smart software which is configurable and customizable for any particular task. Escort has a bunch of sensors. They can deliver any part of vehicle, or not, sometimes not even a vehicle, delivered and digitalized. We, from our side, we are creating the most flexible solution on the market in terms of GPS tracking, which is not the GPS tracking device, it's programmable logic controller. So, and all of this combined are given enough flexible tools for the integrator to deploy the customized solution to that customer who wants to be on top of the wave, because, well, it's hard to be there and they should do something all the time. And my point is that I see one way in this particular story when the integrator creates these out-of-the-box solutions themselves from the tools they have. So we are here, screwdriver, brick, and the hammer. And how they build the house is the sake of the integrator. And what house would that be? So, but we are the most flexible parts of this house, and our imagination is free to do whatever they want. But to make it efficiently enough, they should. Now we see that the integrators are seeing the potential of doing some job for one specific client and creating some very niche solution and trying to scale it between different companies and sometimes even the integrators. So that's what we see as the way out of this controversial thing. When, well, I want to have a simplest tool in the world to be able to scale as fast as possible, and my customer expects something special for them. So one of the ways is when the integrator creates the out-of-the-box solutions out of the tools they have and present it widely to the market, not only for the one client. So that's probably one of the ways out of that. So, yeah.
Okay, so there's probably two comments that I'd like to make. We have sort of a double-edged sword. You mentioned plug and play. We changed the L to an R, because for us now it's plug and pray, because they don't always go together. And when they don't go together, you don't have a lot of scalability or ability to actually make it fit. So and also simplicity comes at very complex thinking, and that's why it is simple. So and as you said, if the customer wants something slightly different, well, hang on, you get plug and play the way that we tell you you're going to get plug and play. That's it. It's our way or no way. So again, this whole thing about an integrator deciding what market they want to be in, because if it's simple for them to do, it's simple for anybody else to do it as well. So the sort of double-edged sword. So are there any things we want to the speakers want to raise in closing, so we can go through and look at the questions? So we've only got 25 minutes to go. And we want to try and keep it on time as much as possible. So in closing, sort of, Ksenia, what comments would you like to make?
Well, first of all, I think that it makes sense for our integrators and our telematic solution providers to continue to watch all the trends, to continue staying in the loop of the solutions that their providers, their partners are releasing, and to think outside their traditional, niches like fleet management, like cold chain transportation, and to see what other possibilities the market is opening for them. Because there are different areas that our solution, already existing solutions that they know that they work with, that can be applied. And of course, like we will do our best to assist here, and we will do our best, to put different projects forward and to, keep our partners aware of our updates in different things that we're doing in the industry. But again, we would like our partners to be with us and to really stay in the loop of different things which are going on.
Okay, great. And Tim, in closing, what would you like to say?
Yeah, sure. You see, all of us who got here, we talk about manufacturers, we talk about developers, and quite major integrator. John, you are. So we all have one thing in combined. It's certain kind of a passion for for making and inventing these solutions and providing it to people. So what can I say? There are plenty of ways for the integrators who want to become more advanced or provide better solutions. There are so many ways to educate yourself. I know Galileosky has a course for the Easy Logic. Not only we also recently implemented and introduced the educational course which you can pass. You can get certified. I know Gurtam has huge community where you can exchange opinions, you can talk to people, go to forum and find these answers. You wouldn't know these answers would even exist, to your, and that would be a solution. So what can I say? We should, test the devices, choose your provider carefully, and educate yourself. And a very important thing: read the manual before you drill the tank. That's one. that's one for me. That's all.
Okay, so Maxime, in closing, what would you like to say?
Well, it's hard to add something to the last part of Tim, because read the manual is always the good thing that can happen to the integrator. But probably to add on top of that is that there are two ways of how can you win over the competition. So the first way is to sell cheaper, and second way is to sell different. So it concerns, it's about anything actually, not only about the product, but about your approach to the clients and about your approach to the business processes of those you are working for. So that's probably it. So probably it's a good thought to think about what exactly the position of my company on the market. How do I want to perform, and how do I want to get to the top of the place where I'm in? So to be cheaper or to make something else. That's it.
Okay, so like I was always told by my mentor many years ago, you can have something cheap, fast, and it works. You can only pick 2 out of 3. Go your hardest. So buyer beware. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions that we want to look at. I think there's one here probably for you, Tim, about the brand of the RFID reader and the tags that we used in the phishing industry. So that was from Escort.
Yeah, right. Yes, this you can find it on our website. The system is called Escort Net. So it consists of the reader and the tag. There are some multiple uses. One thing I should warn you though about that particular case, the tags are not for marine use, you know. So integrator, they did some additional insulation of the sensor. So they did some modifications. Given their background, like, you know, working as a big integrator in Bulgaria, so they were able to do that to protect it from the marine environment. Obviously, we have to talk. We have to understand where equipment should be used into. If it's a non-standard case like this one, which is fascinating, but hey, it's risky. You know, you don't know if it's going to withstand the marine water because it's a very aggressive medium. It did for some period of time, but then, you know, some things should be improved. That comes to the point where we discussed it's better to let us know where the sensors would be used, because in a lot of cases we don't have that information. You know, the sensors are being connected to the tracker, and then we don't know where it was installed. It might get damaged if it's not installed in the proper way. But yes, long story short, the system is called Escort Net. It consists of the reader and tag. You can check it out on the website, and let us know what do you think.
Okay, so just on that protection thing, I would advise all integrators to have 1 can of Tech Coat silicon and 1 can of Tech Coat polyurethane conformal coating. That thing will save your butt so many times in sealing something. But if it's going to be marine use, depending on the depth, make sure there's no air gaps inside those sensors, otherwise your plastic will collapse. Okay, so we have another question on any compatible hardware available that can scan vehicle OBD data and send that data to the device. So probably hand that over to you, Maxime. Your devices are capable of capturing the CAN data?
Yes, absolutely. Both J1931 and both OBD. So there is no need to have some extra hardware that should be connected to the GPS device. There's no use in that. So it's all built in the device itself, and we try to create as flexible solution as possible. It's quite essential that in the vehicle world, all the manufacturers are doing some crazy stuff in the CAN bus and trying to hide the information from which is being transmitted actually inside of the vehicle. But we are trying to be as flexible as possible. Not only we have our database, but also we provide our partners with the tool to reverse engineer the data from the CAN bus or OBD. So it means that each time when we connect to the vehicle, we are getting the raw data, and each time we perform some action, I know, switching on the headlights, pushing the acceleration pedal, adding the fuel, we see that this data is being changed and fluctuating at that moment. So, and from the specific bytes and bit, we can find the particular parameter, the particular PGN that is dedicated to this specific parameter which we are looking for. So that's the story about that. Also, we are working on the CANbot technology, which is the automated thing for getting data out of the CAN bus. But it should be really soon. We'll let you know how easy it becomes to get any data from CAN or OBD, just plugging the device to the CAN. That's it.
Okay, so there's another question on the, is there a requirement for mesh communication for sensors to overcome transmission issues and comms channel limitation in complex environments? So I can make a comment on that. I think the mesh is one way to look at it. The other way is to actually understand the environment that you're deploying in. So look at other technologies such as Wi-Fi, such as the BLE, LoRa, similar to what we're doing now in a deployment in a plantation where we have zero connectivity. I mean, these trucks disappear and are off air for 5 days. So now we're discussing with the customer what is the logical way for us to set up a communications network that may act as a basically a postman type of a solution, where we have one device going around as a collector and the picking up data, which your devices can do, Maxine. But if the integrator wants to look at doing this themselves, there's plenty of ESP32 devices, Arduinos that you could configure to try and do something similar. Mesh, yep, you can look at mesh, but it has its own complexities, because if you've got mesh, you're going to have to put a logic onto the device itself, or you're going to have a mesh controller. So if you want the mesh to be self-healing, then that is not such a simple thing to put in. There are providers who can do it if your customer has got deep pockets and long arms. So deep pockets and short arms don't work in this environment. So yeah, there are ways and means of doing it. So anybody else have a comment on the mesh side?
Yeah, well, thank you for the comment, John, and for your story about our base block or 7X hub technology, and Wi-Fi technology, which acts like a postman. But here, if we talk about complex environment, meaning physical environment, definitely we should consider, but mostly during the installation. So for example, from our side, at some point we understood that to make, well, 7X hub is kind of a mesh network, so we can, the devices are being exchanging information and we deliver it to the monitoring platform in the end. So, and we understood that it's very important to assure the best connectivity possible between these two parts of the system, because if some parts is lacking, it is not working. So that's why it's very essential to read the manual, to put the antennas as good as possible, sometimes even to use some other antennas based on the type of installation you have, because, well, all these radio things, they are different in different types of antennas, and that should be taken into consideration. But overall, from our case, it works well. It works well. For if we are talking about standard mesh networks, the worst environment, physical environment, is the underground mine, and still, me and team, we hold webinar some times ago about how we deliver the fuel data over Wi-Fi from this particular place, where even the wires are not doing a great job because, well, of all those of all those harsh conditions that they are around. So it always should be considered when we're talking about physical environment, but there are, in most of the cases, there is the way to deliver the data.
Okay, so I think also when you start talking about some of the more complex environments, yeah, are we talking about complexity because of the environment, or we're talking complexity because of the solution? Because where we've been caught out is taking wireless solutions in an area where we're getting blasted off the air by some transmitter that is interfering with the frequencies that we're using. So in one situation, we actually had to use our ace up our sleeve, talk to our telco partner, and get them to realign the antennas on the BTS. So they went and did a drive test. They got their technicians to go out, turn the antennas a couple of degrees, and we were operating. Having said that, please be aware that EMF in the way of solar flares or any other EMF device will wreak havoc on any electronics. So yeah, be aware that there are. We've seen some devices out there now being used to destroy electronics via basically an EMF gun. Okay, so we've got a question around the. Okay, so this one will be an interesting one. What could be possible interactions and business of telematics in the metaverse? Let's see how good you're out of it.
Yeah, I would say that's a very interesting question. And in case I could use a metaverse to interact with the customers that I can't interact physically, yes, I would definitely do that. So yeah, that would be an interesting opportunity.
There is another extension of taking not the customer interaction, but using the augmented reality to actually visualize what the sensors are potentially doing, linking that, which we've actually started looking at, linking that to a knowledge base that the user will actually see the sensor data. The sensor data will talk back to an AI. The AI will actually start showing him how and where the fix should be done.
Education, yeah, right. So you can teach people by artificial, what is it? AI? No, not virtual reality. Yeah, you put on the goggles and then you install the sensor, or you teach people how to install the sensor. Yeah. Or I mean, we might as well have this webinar in the metaverse in some future.
Yeah. The problem is in any of these emerging technologies, what is the actual real business benefit? Because we've had a lot of customers, we go to them with a solution saying, oh, we can help you with this, we can show you this. And the guys who have been there for a while go, well, so what? Show me the business benefit of it. You're just bringing another, like AI, another idiot into this. The guys should know this. If they don't understand it, no piece of equipment's going to tell them and take over from experience. So the same thing with the knowledge sharing. Okay, well, you can look at an item, I can visualize the temperature being shown across an entire area, and then identify which spanner you take out of your toolbox and put it on which nut on the device to start to tweak it. But at the end of the day, the human still has to, these things are physical. So doing a virtual repair is not going to help you when it's a physical item that's broken. Okay, so we've already spoken about the sensors themselves being able to collect the data and be able to send it back so they make decisions a la Alexa. There was one question about in regards to the amount of solutions that are being now provided for the video side of it. What are the sorts of things that people should be considering when they're looking to select cameras for these types of ADAS or the driver management systems or any image-based processing solution? So maybe Maxime, do you have any comments on that?
First thing that should be considered is what does the customer expects from the system. So what is the reason they want to see what happens within the vehicle or on the road while the vehicle is moving? There could be different reasons, and based on that, the decision should be made what kind of MDVR or ADAS or DMS would be implemented. And not even which kind of the hardware, but which scenario it will be operating at. For example, we had cases when the MDVR system helped the retailer to run the live stream with the dispatcher center, who will look around at the request of the driver around the truck and see if it is safe enough in a quite criminalistic country to open the truck or not. So, and if it is safe, the driver cannot even do that. Even if it is safe, they check it visually, so no burglars around. And if it is safe, they trigger the lock, the electronic lock, and open the door, and well, now you can unload. That's one of the cases of how MDVR is used. From the hardware perspective, MDVR are all the same as far as I know. So they just bring in you the video stream, and most of the cases they are quite of the same reliability. So it's most about prices probably and how good you are interacting with your supplier. But it's different when it comes to ADAS and DMS because, well, it depends on what is the technology behind that, and is it AI or just the program? How good is the system for your specific country, for your roads, for your road signs, for your traffic lights, and how it's the matter of test. So from our side, the best experience and the best device and the best supplier is chosen by testing. So sometimes it's hard to make a short-term decision right and correct with these tests, but at least you will find out something that will give you more information on how to decide which supplier to use. So that's the way, I guess.
Okay, so a couple of things that I'll add to that from being somebody who buys all these sorts of cameras. Number one, picking up on your point, Maxime, understanding the environment, make sure you know how to select the focal length of the cameras, because the focal length is going to have a huge impact on what your image actually looks like. Number two, understand where that camera is going to go and what the driver can do to basically take that camera off air. So anybody can pick up a camera that's blocked, i.e. I put something over it and it doesn't work. But not many systems can pick up whether or not they put a smear of Vaseline on there. So the camera itself is working, just I can't see anything, it's blurry. So effectively it doesn't do anything. The clever drivers work out if the camera has got infrared, and if it's got infrared, they put a very thin piece of plastic in front of the camera, and that camera will just go white. It will not show anything because the infrared is now reflecting back inside the camera. But it really is, you will get what you pay for. The second consideration is it's pointless getting high definition cameras if you've got crappy communication in the area. Getting 1080p images and 1080p video and sending this over a dribble of an internet connection, it is not going to work. I mean, if you want to go and look at the comparisons between a 640-380 type of image, which tells me whether somebody is doing something, and then 1080p where I can look at the hairs on the driver's nose, but it takes me an hour to get that image to download, if I can get it to download. So really is horses for courses. So if you have got good networks and you've got unlimited data plans, do whatever you want. And if your client's prepared to pay for it. But all of this is a balance when you start looking at video. Second, who the hell's going to review it? You know, we've got, as an example, we've got 70 tera of storage in our video server. Right? We get, we're amassing gigabytes of data every day in 15-second event videos, and nobody is going back and looking at them. Certainly not looking at an hour's worth of video. So again, horses for courses. So select your solution to actually work in your environment. But be careful on the cameras. You know, we found if you buy cheap, you will get cheap. I mean, it'll work for a while. Then all of a sudden you'll start to get pink shading, or you'll start to get the camera having dramas on what is happening. So lots of providers out there, but buyer beware and test the crap out of them if you're going to put it in a remote area, because the last thing you want, here's a $25 camera, $1,000 for your guy to go there and fix it. So be warned. Okay, so I think we've covered all of the questions. Yeah, I think we've got them all, and we've come up to time. So I'd just like to thank each of the speakers, so Maxime, Tim, Ksenia, for sharing with the participants what is going to happen, what they should be thinking about, and really, as I was told many years ago, if it's going to be, it's up to me. So it's not the vendors, it's not the software suppliers, it's your business. You need to be watching what's coming on the horizon, because our competitors are no longer other telematics companies. They are IT companies. They are OEM truck manufacturers. They are OEM vehicle manufacturers, because they're putting sensors in, they're putting connectivity in there, and they're charging us to get access to it. So, yeah, at least look at it. And hopefully this will be one of many sort of seminars that we can do on this sort of topic.
Yeah, thank you, everyone who has joined us today. Special thanks to John, who, well, proved himself like the extraordinary moderator of this discussion, sharing his vision and his experience. Well, on a free basis. You should charge for that.
Very
Definitely.
true. Thank you. Very true.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll remember that next time.
yeah. Ksenia, team, thank you for joining once again. It's always a pleasure to see you all on our webinars. And the best thanks to all those who has joined us from the participants. It is a very great pleasure to see you all here, especially those familiar faces that we see all the time. And stay tuned to the new things, stay tuned to the new events we will hold very soon, and stay tuned to all of the updates that these guys in front of you will share with you during this year, because, well, that's what will change, probably not 2023 but 2022. So yeah, stay tuned, stay focused on your goals, and stay healthy.
Okay, so please, guys, protect yourself from
Yeah, protect yourself from Corona. That's a really nice advice.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everyone.